Well, we all know the Toronto Blue Jays need to find some pieces in the offseason. Looking at some of the free agent class, Juan Soto is available, and there's been some reports of him looking at the Toronto Blue Jays. What are the realistic odds? We'll take a look.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get bet $5 to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Braden Wasco. He's Carter First. As always, you can follow us on Twitter, Braden5 Wasco, Carter First too as well on Instagram, TikTok, at Locked On Blue Jays. The biggest thing we ask of you guys is drop a sub if you're new here on YouTube. It really does help us out, and it keeps us at the top of your page for all your Blue Jays information every day here with Locked On Blue Jays. We got a lot to get into today, Carter. As I said, sort of Juan Soto. There's been some talks about him looking at the Blue Jays in the free agent market this offseason. Then, of course, Springer had some things to say on the Toronto Blue Jays, sort of looking forward to 2025. So we'll talk about his outlook. And finally, of course, we got some other Jays news, series preview, more so in depth than we did yesterday. Carter, let's start with Juan Soto. Again, there's a lot of pieces to this. Just sort of looking at this as a whole, do you think that there's any realistic option that Juan Soto comes to the Toronto Blue Jays? Let's just start there. Do you think it's realistic at all? Is it a possibility?
With the roster construction right now, just based off of how everything is, I think what would need to happen first is something would have to be dealt with between Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. I don't see a scenario where you would sign Juan Soto to this huge $500, $600 million deal, and then you would still have Bo Bichette on your roster, as well as Vladimir Guerrero Jr., another contract that you would like to sign. So in my eyes, one of these three players would not be with the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, the easiest, the cop-out decision would be Juan Soto. It's probably the most likely thing to happen, that he just doesn't come to the Toronto Blue Jays. But in a sense of being realistic, Bo Bichette being on the move can definitely be a realistic thing. We don't know for 100% certainty if they're going to re-sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You have to assume that they're in talks with how much Vladdy has expressed that he wants to stay with the Toronto Blue Jays. And Juan Soto, probably a favorite to go back to the New York Yankees, but a lot more weird things have happened than a guy that's been traded to the Yankees for one season and deciding to leave in free agency. So realistic, Juan Soto coming to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm going to lead that question kind of off with this. And this is, I was looking into some research to see if this was actually a realistic thing. I had my own takes on this, but I wanted to see how other sources among Toronto Blue Jays media have this as well. And Bob Nightingale says that the Toronto Blue Jays could make an attempt to sign the coveted free agent. Again, making an attempt. Toronto Blue Jays trying to be in on majority of the deals, especially when you have as talented of a baseball player as Juan Soto. And then John Heyman actually goes through a little bit of an odds thing here for who he thinks are the leaders to land Juan Soto this upcoming offseason. So he goes into saying that the Yankees are even money. He has the New York Mets at 5-1 odds. Then he has the Los Angeles Dodgers at 15-1 in third place. The San Francisco Giants at 20-1 in fourth place. The Toronto Blue Jays at 25-1 in fifth. And then he's got a couple teams behind at 30-1. The Boston Red Sox, the Phillies, the Chicago Cubs, teams like this. So you look at these odds, obviously, again, we're not even in the offseason yet, so you can't really make too many assumptions and stipulations here. If the New York Yankees go on to win the World Series, you could probably believe that Juan Soto is going to re-sign with that organization. So a lot of things with this are going to be considered after what happens in the playoffs, what happens with the rest of this season. If Juan Soto, it seems like he likes it there so far, but again, the playoffs in New York is a little bit of a different beast. So it is a possibility, but I would say that there's probably a lot of other teams that I would put ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays to land Juan Soto before the Toronto Blue Jays would actually get the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I think you touched on sort of an interesting point there, and that's it depends on how the New York Yankees do in the playoffs. I mean, if they're a first-round exit this year, then maybe the question mark becomes, okay, does Juan Soto really want to stay there on a team that didn't succeed in the playoffs? And he's a guy that probably wants to win. Again, 25 years old. He is a obviously a great bat, the lefty bat in the field. It's everything that the Jays could want, really. This season, he was making it was a 1-year, $31 million deal, and you can expect him to make even more in the next sort of coming years. The question is, will the Blue Jays fork over a bag to him with, when it's proven that they haven't already? They haven't given Vlad the big contract. They haven't given Bo the big contract. And those are two guys that need to be signed first. And you touched on that a little bit as well, Carter. And I realistically, I would hope that they would put an attempt in for Juan Soto. But in doing that, I think then if you don't have a deal done with Vlad and Bo already, I think that's a big slap in the face to Vlad and Bo. And we've talked and heard rumors of the Bo trade, and we'll see sort of what comes of that. If Bo gets moved, then there's maybe a more likely situation that they go after and fork over maybe even more money to Juan Soto to get him to come. But there's a big question mark there, and I think it all sort of depends on what happens with Bo Bichette. At the end of the day, if he decides that he really just doesn't want to be a Toronto Blue Jay, there will be a trade. And if they're going to have to pay Vlad a ton of money, and I fully believe that that will happen, and he's going to get a huge, huge contract. And then in the decision will lie with Ross Atkins of what he can make happen. I don't know. I don't know, Carter. I'm a little bit up in the air on this one. I want to believe that it's a possibility, but also I believed in the Shohei Ohtani deal a little bit and fell for that ruse. So I'm not putting a ton of stock into this. I like that there's reports coming out of the Blue Jays, being in talks with some of these guys. But at the end of the day, until I see pen to paper with some of these guys, I can't believe it yet. I can't. After the Shohei Ohtani stuff last year, after the no really big name moves, I just have very little faith in this management team to successfully lock down a superstar like Juan Soto.
You can look at that point from multiple different perspectives. You could say, the Toronto Blue Jays didn't get Shohei Ohtani. They don't sign anyone big named in the offseason. They get Justin Turner at $13 million. Whoop-de-doo. That's amazing. Or you could look at it from the standpoint that the Toronto Blue Jays were in on Shohei Ohtani, and they were willing to give up $700 million for one player. That maybe they didn't like Cody Bellinger. Again, you look at this free agent class, not the biggest names you could ever say. Cody Bellinger is a big one, obviously. Like we said, Shohei Ohtani, obviously the biggest free agent debatably ever in especially the modern era of the MLB. But you look at some other guys, you get like JD Martinez, Jorge Soler, some of the other guys that we were in on this offseason. Again, you don't overpay on these guys the way it's worked out. It's not the worst thing for your Toronto Blue Jays. But you look at the money situation, and I feel like, again, I kind of let off with this, but I'm just going to flat out say it now. I don't see a situation where you have 3 players in a year where you're going to have to pay them huge money to get them on your team, and they're keeping all in Toronto. If you sign Juan Soto, that's pretty much you're either letting Bo Bichette or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. walk. And just from the sounds of it, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does want to stay in Toronto. Bo Bichette hasn't expressed that nearly as much. You think Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are better friends as well as than Bo Bichette and Juan Soto are, just from their outside experiences, just at All-Star games, things like that. You would think that Vladdy and Juan Soto are closer related, and Vladdy might do a little bit of recruiting this offseason if Juan Soto were to come to the Toronto Blue Jays. But I don't see a scenario of them all 3 being there. You're probably trading Bo Bichette at that point. You're letting him walk. You're doing something. Again, he still has a year left on his contract, so you wouldn't have to move Bo Bichette if you were going to sign Juan Soto. But looking at a guy like Juan Soto and this money and the money debate here, again, Shohei Ohtani, $700 million, but this guy can also pitch the baseball, and he's very effective at doing it. But when you're looking at these guys' numbers, just a quick comparison of just, again, surface level stats of Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto, if you weren't familiar with what they're doing this season. Shohei Ohtani's batting .292, 44 home runs, 98 RBIs. I think he also has like 43 stolen bases. So, again, that's some upside you're not going to necessarily get from Juan Soto, but an OPS of .993. Then you're looking at Juan Soto. Juan Soto is absolutely ridiculous at the plate. .290 average, 37 home runs. That's slightly less, obviously, than Shohei Ohtani, an OPS of slightly above at 1,001. So you're looking at these hitting numbers. Juan Soto is probably going to provide you just slightly less at the plate than Shohei Ohtani. But again, you look at this guy, he's a top 5 player in all of baseball. This guy isn't just Cody Bellinger, who's a really good free agent signing. This guy can change the complete complexity of your baseball team. So if you have the opportunity to get Juan Soto and you have to let Bo Bichette walk and you have to trade him, I'm going to be fully in on board with this. You get Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on the same team. You're not necessarily going to get that Soto Judge pop, but it's going to be damn close to that. At least 1-2 punch would be absolutely insane. Like Juan Soto is walking more than he is striking out. This is a guy that you want on your baseball team. So is this a scenario of, are they going to be able to pay these guys? I mean, you look at the contracts that they've given out. The George Springer, again, $150 million doesn't really compare to the $400, $500 million that Juan Soto could get. So I think the debate would be, are they set to pay out 2 like max contracts, one to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., one to Juan Soto? I think that's kind of where you were stemming from. They haven't even done it once. How are we supposed to be inclined that they're going to do that again? So we're going to have to see one of the dominoes fall. We're going to have to probably see a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract extension. And with that, that'd be another reason for Juan Soto to come to your baseball team. You have some certainty that at least Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be there long-term. You're going to have a team that at least has a few stars together for a significant period of time. You go right now with Juan Soto, you lock him up. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., in theory, could walk this offseason. Bo Bichette could walk this offseason. Then Juan Soto is stuck here on a 10-plus year deal, and he is kind of left with nothing. So there's a lot of dominoes would have to fall into place for this to work out. It is a possibility, something that we're definitely going to be following in the offseason. But the Toronto Blue Jays do have the money to pay this guy. It's just a matter of fact if they are willing to pay both Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Juan Soto, and maybe even Bo Bichette as well if you wanted a 3-headed monster here in Toronto.
Well, and that's the big thing. We've talked about this team needing multiple superstars. We can't just rely on Vlad, and we can't rely on Bo and both of them to be good at the same time. You have to have a few different huge pieces that can make things happen. And so far, the Blue Jays just haven't been able to get that next guy, the other guy, right? Outside of it, we thought it was going to be George Springer. He really hasn't amounted to what we've expected in the last couple of years, and a guy that we needed. But if you still have George Springer, you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you have Bo Bichette, you add in one other big piece, and this team is scary. It would be scary to play against. And yes, the bullpen would need to be bolstered, but for on the hitting side of things, this team is scary. And I think that they could either go down, which we'll talk about more, but they could either go down the route of Juan Soto and pay one guy and, sort of fill in spots as need be otherwise, or you get a couple other free agents, maybe some not as big names, but some big names. I know I keep throwing out Anthony Santander and a few other guys. Maybe you add in 2 pieces like that. I don't know. There's lots of options here for the Blue Jays. They just have to be willing to make a good pitch, maybe overpay. With the way this team played this season, they're going to have to overpay to get some players to come to Toronto. So if that's the case, I'm fully on board. If they have the money, they're willing to spend the $700 million on Shohei Ohtani. They should be able to pay some other guys and really, really bolster this lineup. And again, in saying all of this, I don't necessarily believe that adding 1 or 2 guys is going to win you a World Series, but it'll for sure help you in getting there. Carter, we're going to be talking about this sort of throughout all of the rest of the summer, through the winter. I mean, there's going to be just lots that go on.
I got a little bit more about Juan Soto. Just one more question.
Oh, okay.
I'll kind of throw it out for you to answer first, and then I'll give you my thoughts right after. It's just with Juan Soto, you brought it up slightly. Again, not really a talking point that you discussed in depth, but say you do bring in Juan Soto, you don't lose Bo Bichette. Juan Soto, we could say it, is probably your only major signing of the offseason. Maybe you do bolster the bullpen a little bit, but all your money is going to Juan Soto at that point. Does Juan Soto give this team enough firepower offensively to maybe bring up some of the bullpen struggles to save the starting pitching when it's not necessarily at its best? Would Juan Soto be able to put this team over the edge and actually make them a World Series contender for 2025?
It's a great question, Carter, but I mean, to be honest with you, possibly. If you get Bo Bichette playing like regular Bo Bichette the last few seasons, you get Vladdy where he's at. George Springer can sort of keep what he's doing now alive. And then you got other guys like Ernie Clement and some other guys that'll fill in. I mean, you still got Dalton Varsho in there to be an absolute beast in center field. And then I don't know, you can sort of fill out the lineup. This lineup would just look a ton scarier. It gives Vlad a lot more room. It gives him a lot more guys to hit in. Or if you want to swap him and Juan Soto some days in the 3-4, I mean, there you go. Bo Bichette hits 2, Springer leads off. Who in their right mind wants to come to that lineup and pitch against them? I don't know. Yes, the bullpen would need help. They would have to sign some pieces from the bullpen. But honestly, it's always a crapshoot with getting arms in the bullpen. You never really know who's going to be good from year to year. So you got to hope and pray, and then hopefully this offense can carry them to the trade deadline. Then you make some moves for some strong arms at the deadline. That's what a successful 2025 with Juan Soto looks like.
Well, and who is your what's your batting order? We can kind of think this out just quickly on this podcast here. You go over your top three. Like, I think you got to put Juan Soto above Vladdy, just how often he's walking. You leave George Springer if he's going to hit like this leading off. And that leaves Bo Bichette your four spot. That's a pretty good top four in my book.
I was gonna say even you put Bo too. You go Springer, Bo, Juan Soto, and then Vlad, or the other way around, whatever. I just for the power aspect, if Bo can get it, is starting to hit for average again. I mean, there you go. There you go. That's two, 3 runs if Juan Soto can or Vlad can punch him in. It's just exceptional. If you could do that to start, every third game and you're starting like that, I mean, you're gonna win more games than you're gonna lose just in that aspect.
Yeah, it's 4 unbelievable players right there. Again, it doesn't really matter how you order them. You just have them in your lineup somewhere. Then you probably have Dalton Varsho carrying the bottom of your order. Again, Ernie Clement probably somewhere in there. Alejandro Kirk is at the 7th spot. So you probably do need one more bat in there to make you feel confident. A guy in your 5-hole that can drive in some runs. Doesn't have to be a guy like Anthony Santander, Alex Bregman necessarily. Maybe a supplementary guy that can provide you a little bit more pop off the bench. But you get that offense for the Toronto Blue Jays, assuming that Bo Bichette can just be what he normally is on average. And you get Vladdy a similar season to this season. You get George Springer to perform how he has down the stretch. Maybe this offense can be a very good offense. You see the starting pitching. You look at what that has done with Bowden Francis, Alek Manoah coming back sometime next season. Does this turn this team into a World Series contender? You got to look at teams like the Baltimore Orioles, the New York Yankees, Houston Astros, always going to be in there. You look at the other side, the Phillies, the Dodgers. I'm not necessarily certain that it puts them quite there yet. Again, I would have to look at the bullpen because pitching staffs are what is going to win you a World Series. You have a good pitching staff. You're going to be able to work out of a lot of jams. But boy, does Juan Soto definitely help you on that march if you want to be contending in 2025.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? We've heard so much from this team talk about wanting to contend in 2025. And if they're wanting to contend, you got to make a splash. You got to make some huge decisions. Otherwise, we're going to be floundering again. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, Carter. But we do have some other stuff to get into. And I mean, we can talk Juan Soto in the offseason forever, but we have a lot more episodes to come. And we're going to be covering this every single day because there's going to be news every single day. So we're going to talk about what George Springer's outlook for 2025 is. Very, very far look ahead here. Episode sort of strange that it all came together like this. But yeah, he had some stuff to say on 2025. So we'll get into what he says next. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. You guys know we're big fans of Game Time. Just use the app going down to Minnesota to watch the Twins and the Blue Jays. And we got all our tickets through Game Time because why wouldn't we? Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I always talk about Game Time has just some of the best features. I mean, the all in pricing that they have, where you can see everything up front, so you're not going to the checkout thinking you got a great deal, and then they hit you with a bunch of fees. Game Time shows it to you right up front. The seat view is fantastic. They have the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So, Carter, a lot more to get into here. I mean, the Juan Soto stuff, I just feel like I could talk for hours because again, when a season doesn't go your way or your team's way, you sort of immediately start looking ahead. Okay, what can they do to fix this next year? What can happen? What can happen?
What can the Toronto Blue Jays do for us to get hope back for this team in 2025? And you start crazy. You start with Juan Soto, obviously. Saving grace for the Toronto Blue Jays. 2025. You heard it here first. Locked On Blue Jays.
Yeah, we've got the inside scoop. They're locking down Juan Soto. No. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a long offseason. There's got to be some signings made. So, again, we'll cover this as it comes out. George Springer had some interesting stuff to say just on sort of looking ahead to 2025 and whatnot. So I'll sort of read you the couple quotes I have here, Carter, and just give me your sort of immediate reactions. He starts, I think for this team, you've just got to let the dust fall where it may at the end of the year and on to 2025 with expectations. I think everybody will learn from this and understand what we didn't do, what we did do right, or what we didn't do right. We'll put it all out there again next year. So, I mean, he's pretty much tying up a bow in that comment, Carter, just saying 2025 is over, or 2024 is over. We know where we're at. It's done. sort of the look ahead aspect and yeah, seeing where things fall. To me, I don't know. I think you have to push things into a direction where you want them to fall. I think you can't be stagnant. You can't just run the same team back out. We talk about this all the time. You can't run this same team back out on the diamond and expect something different to happen.
Well, and a lot of this does stem from some of the players on the team already. George Springer having a successful season next season is going to be instrumental to this team having success. You look at how George Springer hit at the start of the season. It was not great. He was a black hole in your leadoff spot in the lineup. Again, that's partly due to your manager's decisions. But when you have a record and a career like George Springer, you're going to give him a longer leash than you would give a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, especially leading off. But you're looking at George Springer again in this month of August, a guy that, again, is very important to this team's success. But in August, he has hit 165, has a 257 on base, a 351 slugging for an OPS of 608. It's not going to play from your leadoff spot. This is a guy that you need to hit, probably have a 750 OPS at minimum, hit about 250. Again, the average doesn't necessarily matter, but you got to have this guy getting on base. You need your leadoff hitter to get on base for your power hitters, like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if Bo Bichette returns to form. You want these guys to get on base and actually give your big cleanup hitters, your big power hitters, a chance to hit with runners in scoring position and runners on base. So George Springer is going to have to figure it out himself. He is a big part of the reason why this Toronto Blue Jays offense didn't succeed throughout the first half of the season. He's going to be a big reason why this Toronto Blue Jays team does or does not succeed in the year of 2025. So again, it's not just George Springer. Baseball is a team game. Obviously, you need all of your teammates to contribute. You need all your players to provide good baseball. You need them to be good teammates. You need them to be tough outs, and obviously just be good team members. You don't want them to be cancers in the locker room. So not necessarily saying George Springer is locker room cancer. Definitely not saying that at all. Definitely one of the guys that is going to be better for team morale. But it all starts with a leader and a veteran like George Springer. You got to start from the top. These players aren't going to provide and produce for you. It's not going to be very successful. But you look at this season. This season was pretty much over at the halfway point. Some people maybe would have said earlier, when you look at how this team came out, they came out flat. You can't come out and just be 5, 6, 7 games under 500 before the All-Star break, and pretty much just kick the tires and kick your feet out from beneath you before the season even really gets going.
Yeah, Carter, and from that slow start, me and you were the biggest advocates of saying every game matters. And they were sort of coming out in every game and not believing that and thinking that everything was just going to work out in their favor, not having to put in all the effort. I don't know, maybe not all the effort, but all the care in the world about every single game. And I think now they are starting to realize, holy moly, if we didn't lose 30 games at the start of the season, we might be in a better position now. And that's exactly sort of what this team's problem was. I don't think they cared enough at the start of this season and cared about, every single game. And that's a huge part of that, Carter, and especially from George Springer, who you said was a black hole for this team. Just moving on, Carter, to sort of the rest of what he said. I think Springer said keeping the duo in Toronto for the long haul. So talking about Bo and Vlad here, he says, I think it's huge. Bo and Vladdy have been together since they were kids. I was brought here 4 years ago, and I feel like I've been here the whole time. To have those two here is huge, not only for the locker room, but for the organization. For me, I love them both, but again, I understand the other side of the game, but I hope we can all work together and make another run at it. And what I get from that, I don't know. It's exactly what we're hearing is I don't think anybody has a clue what's going on behind closed doors with Bo Bichette. I think it's pretty clear to see what's going on with Vlad. But with the Bo Bichette situation, I think it's completely lost here in everything. I think that the closed door meetings are extremely closed door. I don't think that they're it doesn't sound like they're close coming from that, from what George Springer obviously doesn't know a ton, but if he doesn't know and everybody else doesn't know, it seems like nobody has a clue. It is important to keep Vlad and Bo. That's what we just talked about. You got to have those two guys to build around. As much as people want to say, let Bo Bichette leave, there's no replacement for Bo Bichette. Yes, you might get another guy that can come in and hit the same but defensively and everything combined, you're not going to get a guy you're not going to sign a guy or trade for a guy that's as good as Bo Bichette. That's just ridiculous to think. And I think George Springer knows that. And the only concerning thing I see from that is hopefully we can have one more run at it. I don't think it can be one more run. I think your thinking is you have to sign Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. long-term And then you have to add in another piece, like we talked about the Juan Soto thing, but another piece long term that there's 3 guys, 3 core pieces that you can build around if you're going to try to keep this thing rolling for the next few years and compete in the next few years.
See, and what the Blue Jays could have did to just avoid this whole contract situation is that 3 years ago, even in 2021, again, you're paying a guy at his highest point at that time. But if you sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at that point, you're probably not looking too much over $300 million, even at that time. And as you wait longer and longer, as the teams get more and more money, the contracts get higher and higher. There's a little bit of pettiness among the league, obviously, with players wanting to get paid more than their counterparts. It's something you wouldn't have necessarily had to deal with. But again, that's just something I want to throw in there. It kind of skews off from the conversation point a little bit here. When you're looking at Bo Bichette and you're looking at this one last ride thing here that George Springer was saying, yeah, I guess like if you don't want Bo Bichette to be traded necessarily in the offseason, I guess is where he's coming from. It's George Springer. You're not expecting, and they're in the middle of the season. You're not expecting him to know anything at this point.
No.
If he knows that Bo Bichette is leaving in the offseason, that's probably not a good thing that a guy like George Springer, a veteran in your clubhouse, is worried about something that's happening in the offseason when you still have 25 games of Major League Baseball left to play. Yeah, you want this thing to be sort of in the closet right now. You want to be a closed doors hush hush, especially during the season. The offseason, if some rumors start circulating, it is what it is. You're not on the baseball field. You don't have to worry about distractions. That's definitely not a good thing for a clubhouse when one of your superstar players is rumored to be on his way out again, especially now that he's back with the MLB club, taking ground balls on the field, getting his reps in. If he's just there and then rumored to be on his way out, can't be good for a team. So I'm not taking too much away from George Springer not knowing anything. You don't expect him to know anything. It's not necessarily any of his business. It's his business, is what he should be concerned on is just to perform for the Toronto Blue Jays team, have successful at-bats. The Bo Bichette stuff, the dominoes will fall, especially from a player's perspective. If you want people to make assumptions or circulate news and just maybe throw out some wild takes, leave that to us. That's the podcasters' jobs. That's the people on Twitter. I'm not too worried about George Springer having some crazy takes on Bo Bichette. I want him to be just a good teammate, say as little as possible, and not stir the pot too much, especially when you still have baseball going on.
Yeah, and I think that's what he did, right? You look through that, he talks about how much he likes them, how important the two of them are to this organization, to the fans and everything. And I think he hit the nail on the head. I think he handled this perfectly as anybody should. I think it's a solid answer. And we'll have to wait and see. Again, all of this is speculation. It's all what ifs right now, but that's all we have. We don't know. We're not in the room. We're not in the meetings knowing anything either. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, the offseason is going to come quick for this Toronto Blue Jays team. We got some, but you know what? There's still another series to go here. Toronto Blue Jays, Phillies. 2-game series. I don't know who cares, but we got some other Jays news as well. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with all that. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know I'm a huge FanDuel guy. I'm constantly throwing bets out. They got their live same-game parlays that I love. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Again, we're huge NFL guys. We're going to be throwing every game on. We're in, I don't know, combined what, Carter? I don't know if it's 8 fantasy leagues. I'm not even sure what it is at this point. All you need is a Google account and current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. FanDuel. So, Carter, couple games on the docket here. We'll get into that, but I know you had a couple bits of information here for the Locked On Blue Jays sort of listeners. What do you got for us today?
Really, all I have for today is just I just want to know your take on the 2-game series. We always have it against the Philadelphia Phillies. Probably a good team to have that against. You don't want to be playing that team too much more than you have to. It's obviously fun when they do come to town, or the Toronto Blue Jays are playing them. You see some players that you don't necessarily play all the time, especially when you're in a lost season right now. But overall, for a 2-game series, not necessarily something you can really get into. A lot of series splits. If you're a fan of winners in MLB baseball, you're not really getting that for the 2-game series. But overall, just what are your thoughts on the 2-game series?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, again, if for people not in Toronto, like I sort of sometimes look at it from a fan perspective as well, right? You're going to pick a series to go to, and odds are you're going to pick a series that you can go to 3 games for. And when there's the 2-game series, like, I don't know, like, yeah, I can go see some guys that I don't see often, but it's only 2 games. Maybe I'll save my money and go, a different weekend or something, or a different week. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like the splits either. I want to know if the Jays are a series winner or a series loser. There's a lot more series losses this year, but whatever. Usually, anyway. So no, not a huge fan of sort of the 2-game series. Sort of just feels like a waste. Sort of feels like, oh, okay, we just got 2 games to get through, and then let's get back to regular scheduled programming. But besides that, I don't know. I take it or leave it. Whatever. It is more games this year. It's tough to say if I like them or hate them because every game right now sort of doesn't matter. So these ones just matter even sort of less to me a little bit.
Yeah, the Minnesota Twins, they took all the air out of our tires, unfortunately. Just not a lot to get excited for anymore. So might as well get excited for the 2-game series. Yeah, absolutely love to see it. I think I'd be a little bit more pissed off if the Blue Jays are playing a team like the Marlins or maybe like the Nationals. If you're playing the Philadelphia Phillies, you only get them 2 times. You get 2-game series. Not going to complain too much, especially when you're usually making a run for the playoffs. But it is going to be fun to watch some of the pitching matchups this weekend, as well as guys like Alec Boehm, Bryce Harper. Obviously, so many good players in this Philadelphia Phillies team and system. But going over the pitching probables, I got Tyler Phillips on Tuesday versus Chris Bassett. Tyler Phillips, not the greatest guy, not a guy that's usually in the rotation, of 5.5 ERA. 4-1 record, though. That's just how much better the Phillies are than the Toronto Blue Jays. Because Chris Bassett's looking at a 9-13 record, 4.27 ERA. And then you got Christopher Sanchez versus Bowden Francis on the Wednesday. Again, Bowden Francis, a guy that we do have our magnifying glasses on, guy that we are watching closely. Just for a little bit of that competitive edge down the rest of this season stretch, the off season, and obviously for spring training for that final rotation spot. But Braden, what are you just looking for from the series? Anything in particular from the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, the big one's Bowden Francis. Hit the nail on the head with that one. And Bowden Francis him and Yariel Rodriguez are the 2 guys that we're going to be looking at sort of consistently here to see what they can do, right? What are they bringing to the table for next season? A couple other guys, I still want to see Will Wagner play. I've been really enjoying watching him. So I'm keying in on him because I think he sort of looks like a guy that can develop into a great 1-2 hole hitter eventually. So we'll have to wait and see what Will Wagner can bring to the table as well. Besides that, Carter, I mean, honestly, not a whole lot. Hopefully, Jordan Romano comes back with this team soon. Hopefully, Bo Bichette gets back. It might be this series for Bo Bichette. We'll have to wait and see. I sort of have a feeling it won't be this series, and we'll sort of look ahead to the Brave series. I think that's a more likely destination for Bo Bichette, but we'll have to wait and see.
The one guy that I want to see in this series as well, and just want to see some more playing time from. That's why I do want to see Bo Bichette back. Obviously, he's one of the best players on this team, especially when he's playing Bo Bichette caliber baseball. But it does kind of suck for this one player is Leo Jimenez. This guy's just putting his body on the line. Obviously, we didn't necessarily talk about this too much. That dive into the outfield seats that he's making, just putting the body on the line, getting hit by pitches, making diving plays, just really the ball player that is just looks like a 5-tool player. Looks like a guy that really is putting it all on the outfield turf every single time he's out there. Again, you want to see it a little bit more with the bat, but he has been hitting doubles. He has been hitting gaps, lining some baseballs. So I want to see not only from Leo Jimenez, just everyone on the Toronto Blue Jays, especially these younger players. I want to see them put the bodies on the line. I want to see them get a little gritty out there, get some effort, just see him give what it takes to be a good baseball team down the stretch, even though right now things don't necessarily matter. But right now is the perfect opportunity to show the Toronto Blue Jays management and just the front office who has the most heart out of these prospects. So heart is something that you can't really teach. So if you can get to these guys, the guys that just love the game of baseball and want to provide their best effort for their baseball team, or those are the guys that I'm going to be looking at down the stretch, especially for these guys that are going to be competing for roster spots for the offseason and then into spring training for 2025.
Yeah, a lot to look ahead to. I mean, these games now are exactly what we just talked about. It's a look ahead to 2025. It's sort of what this whole episode was. It was a look ahead to 2025, what goes on in the offseason, who will be where will some of these players fall, what spots will be open. It's what we're going to be covering sort of here throughout the rest of the season and the rest of the offseason into spring training. Where will everybody fall? What will the Blue Jays do? And a lot more to come, Carter. Sort of just before we get out of here, do you got anything else before we sort of get out?
No, not too much. Just again, want to see the Blue Jays compete. Want to just enjoy the last little bit of baseball we're getting here. About a month left. It's gonna fly by. Again, when we're in the months of November, December, we're going to be asking for Toronto Blue Jays baseball. So don't get too emotionally invested in it. Obviously, if you haven't heard it anywhere else or you haven't looked at the standings, been watching Toronto Blue Jays baseball, the season is over. Sorry to break it here, but yeah, you might as well get your 22-ish games in while you can, and maybe let's go for a win against the Philadelphia Phillies. At least show the NL who the big dogs are, even if we are last in the AL East at this point.
As always, guys, thanks for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. Make sure you make Locked On MLB your second listen. Host Paul Sullivan, Sully, brings you all the up-to-date information throughout and news stories, everything on the MLB. He's got all of that covered. He sort of hits the big topics where we sort of focus in team to team. So yeah, make sure you check that out. Locked On MLB. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, thanks for listening. We'll be back with another episode coming tomorrow.